I was sitting in my chair, looking around the room and thinking about all the attractive women there. Why did Mark Lavalier choose my wife? What made her agree to it, and why did she leave me with our kids, who are getting more independent and probably won't be coming back home anytime soon? Linda and I had already planned what we would do when we have the house to ourselves. I had been thinking about how Linda and I would get on in the future, assuming we'd get closer with more time together. Then it suddenly occurred to me. I suddenly realized that my future might not include Linda. I felt a bit foolish, but then I felt angry too. I could sense the concern and the gazes around the table as if they were afraid I might do something foolish. Dee, who was seated in a booth at the far end of the dance floor, was anxious. He asked me if I was okay. Over his shoulder, I could see 4 striking young women. Why hadn't Mark Lavalier chosen one of them? I observed them briefly before bursting into laughter. I suddenly started laughing, which surprised everyone at the table. My laughter was so loud that it drew attention to our group. I was crying tears of joy once my laughter subsided. I wiped my tears and flashed a broad smile to everyone, realizing my life had undergone a profound change. I was no longer bound by monogamy. My wife's concern for my feelings vanished as she no longer cared about mine. All eyes were fixed on me. I turned to Dee with a smile and removed my wedding ring, handing it to her. She was astonished. I told her to pass it along to Linda. I'll catch up with you later. I have to go. I tossed a $10 bill onto the table for my drink. You were so supportive of Linda's infidelity, you can cover it. I walked away from the table. My former friends called out to me from the club entrance. I pondered what I would say if they attempted to follow me. But one thing was clear. Any husband who disregarded my warning and pursued me would meet a broken nose. I contemplated Linda's pursuit of selfish pleasure and my own intentions for self once I got to the hotel. I asked at the front desk for a suite, but they weren't available. The clerk suggested a honeymoon suite instead, and told me about all the amenities. I said I'd take it, and that I'd cover the cost for both rooms. My wife will stay in the original room, while I'll be in the suite. I told the young woman behind the desk that I had made special arrangements for my wife. She handed me the key card for the suite and provided directions. I made a request. If my wife inquires about the key to my room, please refrain from giving it to her. Actually, could you leave? I asked her to keep my whereabouts the secret if my wife asked. The young woman looked curious but smiled. I'll make sure the hotel staff knows what to do. She said she would. I went back to my room to get my things, leaving Linda's in the bins. I took the elevator to the top floor. I was amazed at the size of the honeymoon suite, which had a jacuzzi on the balcony with a great view of the city. I'd brought an expensive tuxedo in case we wanted to go out for drinks at one of the nearby restaurants. I put my jacket on and went back to the club, stopping by the ATM on the way back. There was a line at the entrance, and I saw the doorman approach it confidently. I gave him a $100 bill, and he gave me a smile in return and opened the door. He welcomed me inside, and my former friends were seated at a table as I entered. I scanned the club, hoping to spot what I had observed earlier, a table by the dance floor occupied by 4 stunning young women. There were no men with them, which made me think it was probably a bachelorette party, which suited me fine. As I walked through the club, Dee spotted me and tried to wave and call my name as I passed their table. Everyone turned to look at me, but I ignored them and crossed the hall to approach a table occupied by 4 women. The 4 women were sitting at a table without any men with them, which I thought was a good sign. They were all smiling at me, and the taller brunette was laughing and explaining that they were there for a friend who had been left by someone else. They were there to cheer her up. I turned to the petite redhead, who? She smiled and held out her hand to help her out of the booth as we danced. I asked her what her name was. I'm Jim, by the way. I introduced myself. How could someone be foolish enough to let go of such a beautiful woman, she responded. Because he's an idiot, we both laughed as we continued dancing and chatting. Samantha told me she was studying nursing. Samantha told me she was in college and grew up nearby. As a slower song began, we kept dancing with the music, which was now softer. Samantha asked, "Are you married, Jim?" I told her we were no longer together and asked if it was her wife who had danced with Mark Lair earlier. I noticed she had disappeared after that dance. Samantha said, "You weren't the only one who noticed." I flashed her a smile. Samantha returned the warmth with a smile, and we danced closely until the song's end. We'd both recently experienced heartache from people we care about, so holding each other felt comforting. When the music ceased, we made our way back to Samantha's table. Samantha said, "I know we agreed no men would join us, but I want Jim to stay." The brunette teasingly played with us responded, "I don't know. We did say no, guys. How about I treat us to a couple bottles of champagne to make up for it?" I proposed, "I'm not sure." "A deal's a deal." Samantha countered, "I'm not sure either." We saw Mark Lavalier left with his wife. They all exclaimed, "We didn't see a thing." 3 of the ladies shifted around the booth to make room for Samantha and me. Before I could ask their names, the blonde next to Samantha asked, "Do you two have an open marriage?" "Absolutely not," I replied. Another blonde chimed in, "What did she say?" "She said she was going to the restroom, but she slipped out the back of the club with Mark." I motioned with my thumb over my shoulder, and all my former acquaintances covered for her. Just then, the waitress approached, inquiring if everyone enjoyed the champagne. I received smiles all around. "2 bottles of your finest champagne, please," I ordered, and the girls applauded before they could ask another question. I introduced myself. Their names were Kim and Christy, and they were all nursing students, just like Samantha. After the champagne arrived and everyone had a glass, Christy, the brunette, asked about my plans regarding my wife. As far as I'm concerned, our relationship ended. As soon as she left the room, I was asked if I have kids. I do, unfortunately, have a son and daughter aged 15 and 13. They'll soon be more independent, and I'll address things with my wife. Samantha linked arms with me and said loudly, "Forget about it, you're with me tonight." We toasted with our glasses and drank some champagne. I shared a few jokes with the girls. We all laughed and drank more as they danced with guys while Samantha stayed seated with me, her arm around me. As the evening went on, Christy got upset and suddenly stood up and left. We all looked to see where she went. It seemed that Dad had come to talk to me, but Christy stopped her near my ex. We couldn't hear what they were saying, but we saw Christy jab Dad in the chest and yell at her, ending the conversation. Dad got upset and started crying, then sat back down. Then Christy got frustrated with the whole table and the people around us started laughing. When Christy came back, Kim and Susan gave her a high five. Christy took a sip of her champagne, smiled at me, and said that none of them were going to come near our table for the rest of the night. I looked back at their table and saw that they all got up to leave. Jane and Dee looked upset, and none of them looked our way. "What happened, Christy? I saw that woman try to approach you." I asked, so I pushed her away and told them exactly what I think about those who help cheaters. "You left quite suddenly." I think they were hoping I'd forgive Linda to ease their consciences. "I owe you a kiss," Samantha said, playfully, as she seized my head. "Oh, you really shouldn't," she added, egged on by the other girls. After breaking the kiss, Samantha bestowed a sweet smile. Kim teased, "Get a room, you too." I interjected, "Actually, I have a suite in a hotel nearby, and you ladies seem unfit to drive. If we hurry, we can still have champagne delivered to our room after settling the bill." The 4 of us made our way to the hotel. Samantha clung to my arm while the others were leaning on us for support during the reception. I ordered 4 bottles of champagne for our room. When I mentioned to the receptionist that it was a honeymoon suite, the ladies burst into giggles and started singing the wedding march. Samantha blushed deeply but held as we got closer to our room. The ladies joked about me carrying the bride over the threshold. Samantha looked at me with her eyes wide open and said, "You don't have to if you don't want to." I pushed open the door, scooped Samantha into my arms, and carried her inside. Samantha gave me a big hug and kissed me. The other ladies were laughing, but they stopped teasing me when Christy saw the jacuzzi on the balcony. Before I could put Samantha down, they had all taken off their bras and underwear and were in the jacuzzi. Samantha kept holding my hand and smiling at me. Then there was a knock on the door. It was the champagne delivery guy. He brought the champagne to the ladies. We chatted and laughed. Susan said I was overdressed and urged me to undress. I laughed, explaining I was keeping Samantha company. They playfully urged Samantha to join them in the jacuzzi, but she simply smiled and led me back to the room. We went to the bridal suite while one of her friends sang the wedding march from the balcony, laughing hysterically. The next morning, I woke up with Samantha wrapped around me and 3 other undressed ladies sprawled across the king. They must have joined us later, as Samantha and I got out of bed. She watched me, and I smiled back. "Did you enjoy yourself, Jim?" "Yes, it was the best night of my life. No regrets." I'd never had sex with Linda in the shower before. I lifted Samantha up and put her on my penis while I was standing, pressing her against the wall. She wrapped her legs around my waist. Although it was a bit of a challenge to stand like that, it led to one of the most intense orgasms I'd ever had. Samantha had already climaxed twice, each time loudly, when we left the shower. Samantha and I found that our passionate lovemaking had woken up the other ladies, despite their hangovers. They were in good spirits, ordering room service and drinking mimosas. Christy said, "I can't wait to try that shower. You two made it sound like it's the best ever." The 3 girls laughed as Samantha and I smiled at each other after everyone had left. Samantha was the only one who'd showered and left, though. She'd asked me for a lift home, so I gave her a lift. "Jim, I know what your wife did was awful, but you can still make up with her if you want to. If not, I'd be happy to see you again. Wife, I had a great time with you. You're what I need at the moment, so give me a call if you think we can make it work." I replied, kissing Samantha at her doorstep as she opened it. Christy greeted me from the couch with a smile and a wave. I realized that I was putting off a decision about Linda returning to the club. I'd been a bit spontaneous in my response to her infidelity, but it didn't really resolve my issues with Linda. It did lift my spirits a bit when I got home, though. I took a moment to relax, sinking into a chair in the dimly lit living room, lost in thought about how to navigate the end of my fractured marriage with minimal impact on my children. I didn't bother turning on the light. Eventually, after an indeterminate amount of time, I heard a car pull into the driveway, followed by the sound of keys turning in the lock. "Jim, Jim," I heard her voice echo, mirroring the tone I was accustomed to hearing upon her return from errands. As she shut, I opened the front door and turned on the light. I faced her and saw that she was unchanged. She was wearing the same blue dress, draped over her dark hair and cascading down her back. Her features were familiar, and she was wearing rings on her fingers. It was as if nothing had happened. She hadn't spent the night and morning with another man, as if it had never happened. I thought I would see some visible difference, like a trace of guilt or shame on her face. But there was nothing. Nothing's changed. It's just me, the same old me. I know you're feeling confused, but I want you to know that my feelings for you haven't changed. I love you, and I always will. I was so caught up in my own thoughts that I didn't realize I'd adopted a detached tone when I spoke to Jim. I was looking at Linda and thinking about what I'd said, and I realized I'd come across as cold and unemotional. I felt like I needed to say something to her, so I told her to go and take a shower. She eventually obeyed, but she didn't say anything as she left. After her shower, Linda came downstairs and asked Jim where her clothes from the night before were. "I think they're still in the hotel room where you left them. You didn't bring them back." "No." As if on the cusp of reproach, Linda hesitated, realizing that any criticism of my actions would only amplify her own misdeeds. Instead, she lapsed into silence, recognizing the futility of such an argument. "Why did you leave them? He's wealthy and renowned, able to have any woman he desires. When he asked me to dance last night, I felt like the most sought-after woman in the room. He made me feel truly special," Linda gushed, still basking in the glow of the previous night as she spoke. It was evident she had become lost in reminiscing about the moments shared with Mark, completely disengaged from our conversation. That's when I realized it was truly the end. Linda will forever treasure her time with Mark. With Mark Lavalier, I was just an afterthought. I asked myself, do you love him? No, she replied. I love you, Jim. You hesitated, I said. I know what that look means. You would have gone with him if he'd asked. It was just one night. It was just physical. The conversation ends here. I need time to think. Pack some things for yourself and the children. Stay with your parents for the week. But that's it for now. If you really want to resolve this quickly, given how I'm feeling, you won't get the outcome you want. Linda said this time. There was anger in her tone and expression. Linda packed her bag and left as soon as she was out of sight. I set my plan in motion, seeing Linda at the doorway in her familiar blue dress, unchanged. This triggered an epiphany. I realized that change was necessary for my survival. I contacted my boss requesting 2 weeks off. I rented a truck and got supplies from the hardware store, wood, drywall, paint, and 2 exterior doors. When I got back, I gathered my tools and started working. First, I removed the front door and the surrounding windows. I cut out a big opening and installed the 2 front doors, putting the old one on the right and the new one on the left. Then I framed the wall along the main entrance, dividing the house into 2. I also applied drywall. I was converting it into I installed a new back door on the left side, where the new kitchen would be, mirroring the layout of the other side. I transformed the office into a 3rd bedroom on my side, and the dining room became the 3rd bedroom on Linda's side. Once completed, each side of the duplex nearly matched, except for the detached garage on Linda's side, which I plan to replicate on mine later. I changed the garage lock and the access code on the garage door to ensure only I also had access to the backyard, where I built a fence to divide it in 2 and create a duplex. I made daily calls to my children to keep them updated on the renovations, despite Linda's requests to talk. I told her I wasn't ready to listen. A few days later, I reached out to Samantha, eager to hear her voice and arrange more time together. She said, I thought you had forgotten about me. I can't get you out of my mind, she added. Would you consider? I suggested going on a trip together, but she wasn't interested in any more teasing. I then suggested a weekend getaway, just the 2 of us. She was interested, so I asked her if she could get away that weekend. She said she could, so I suggested the Bahamas. She said it sounded tempting and that she could get away that weekend, fly out on Thursday and return on Tuesday. She agreed, and we exchanged excitement about our upcoming adventure. I said goodbye to her and got on with finalizing my travel arrangements. A spontaneous trip to the Bahamas wasn't cheap, but why not take the chance? If Linda decides on a divorce, she'll receive half of our savings and my salary for child support. I found it amusing to think of it as Linda indirectly funding part of the trip with Samantha. I transferred our savings into a bank account solely under my name and redirected my salary to that account. I doubted Linda would cancel the credit card, though. I wanted to make sure I had access to the funds, just in case. I worked really hard for 16 hours a day and managed to put up most of the walls. I left a few areas unfinished, though. By Wednesday, I had painted and trimmed the central wall on Linda's side. I knew I'd have to separate utilities like electricity, gas, and water later on, but Linda's side shared utilities, so she couldn't disconnect my side. On Wednesday night, I told Linda to bring the kids home the next morning. On Thursday morning, I secured my section of the house and waited outside, sitting on a chair as they arrived and stepped out of the car. They seemed bewildered on the front lawn. Emma broke the silence. Dad, what's going on? I turned our home into a duplex, like I said I would, and asked them to move to their new rooms. They all stared at me incredulously, so I assured them, leading them through the new layout while Linda attended to their bags. Their bags were empty. Our tour finished in the living room on the right side, but Dad, the living room is much smaller. Tommy said, "Don't worry, you won't even notice." Plus, I'm going to add a garage on the other side and eventually a pool with a jacuzzi. I promised, and the kids smiled. Linda prompted them. While she exchanged glances with me, it seemed like she was eager to talk, but I joined the kids to help them settle in and make sure they had everything they needed. After unpacking, I pulled out sandwiches from a local deli, and we gathered around the kitchen table for lunch. "Dad, what's all this about?" Emma asked. She focused mostly on Linda's. After spending the last few days with her, it was clear to Emma and Tommy that she was avoiding their questions. "I've realized that things are bound to change. I'm just getting prepared, that's all. I mentioned that you could have at least talked to us first to see how we felt." Emma said, "Well, actually, it was Mom's idea. She felt we needed a change of pace." I explained, grinning at Linda, who seemed surprised. "Mom, why make such a big decision without discussing it with us?" Emma asked. "Yes, Mom, don't you care about our thoughts?" Linda seemed puzzled. "It was just a misunderstanding," she said. "Your father got the wrong idea," Linda said. "I didn't mean to mislead you. I thought you were pretty certain about it. But when I saw how committed you were, I knew there was no going back." Linda was on the verge of tears before she left the room. Tommy asked what was up with Mom lately. "She's been crying over everything," I told him. I just gave a shrug and said they should ask her before Emma could ask more. I told them about my planned trip out of town, saying I'd call every evening but be unreachable otherwise. I gave them all a kiss on the head and went straight to the door. I wondered if they noticed I didn't say goodbye to their mom, who was in the bedroom. I picked Samantha. We got up and went out. It was a great experience. First-class flights, a luxurious resort and royal treatment. A weekend filled with sun, sand, food, and drinks. It was fantastic. Samantha was genuinely appreciative and showed her enjoyment at every turn. By the time we headed back, we were both bronzed and so familiar with each other. On Tuesday, Samantha kissed me goodbye with real passion. She asked if I wanted to spend one more night with her. I said yes, but we need to meet in person sometime, and you have classes tomorrow. Call me before bed. I need to hear your voice after our final kiss. I drove home feeling content. Samantha mentioned last night that she could see herself falling for me. Falling for someone like me. When I got home, I saw Linda's car in her driveway. I decided to avoid her, so I parked on the street in front of my house. Linda knocked on my door. She said, "You're back." Linda was clearly taken aback and retreated to her room. I suddenly realized that living on her side of the duplex was not going to happen. We sat at her kitchen table. "Jim, I love you. I want things to go back to normal," she said. "It won't happen," I replied. "Why not?" she asked. "Because if you haven't noticed, you did something. That changed how I feel about you forever." "That shouldn't define us," she argued. "Actually, it doesn't change what happened or how I feel about it, but I still love you," I said, gathering my thoughts. Imagine we're on a date with friends. You leave me for another man and spend the entire night and morning with him. If this happened on our first date, would there have been a second? But Jim, it was Mark. She pleaded. I don't care who it was. You chose someone else over me. You chose to sneak out of the club and be with Mark Lavalier. It was just one night. You've had your whole life to show me you love me. The moment someone more famous spoke to you, I became insignificant. I said, "Does this mean I should keep you away from all famous people? There's a marathon this weekend. Will you sleep with the winner?" "That's not fair," she protested. "So now you want fairness? You want a chance to minimize what you did? You want a chance to talk me out of my anger? You want a chance to shame me for feeling betrayed?" I was given the chance to accuse her of not putting our family first. It seems I'm the only one expected to be fair in this relationship. I reached for her hand, and she reluctantly took it. We locked eyes, and I knew I was about to deliver a painful blow. Linda needed to understand how our future relationship would unfold, and I was eager to do so. To show her it's too late, Linda. It's too late. I found someone else. She revealed, no. I countered, Linda, you know who it is. She asked, do you know who it is? I replied, I'm sure Dad and your friends told you about the redhead. She confirmed, the woman who took your place on the anniversary. You replaced the words that were said to her with ones that came to you. I looked into Linda's eyes and saw sadness. I realized that Dee must have sent Linda pictures of Samantha and me dancing, which made her look like she was angry. Linda asked if you were doing this to retaliate against her, introducing some 24-year-old. I'm 25. I told her to go ahead and do it to even the score. She's actually 21. I spent 4 days with her in the Bahamas. Remember that dream vacation we always talked about? It was fantastic. I wore a big smile as I spoke, unable to contain my excitement. The weekend truly had been remarkable. Linda glared at me. Once I'd finished speaking, I could tell my words had stoked her anger. I knew my grin was only making it worse, so I took a deep breath and tried to relax my face. Linda's eyes were burning with fury, so I knew she was about to unleash a torrent. She looked at me with disapproval, but when she saw my grin again, she realized I'd been waiting for her to say something. Linda stopped, took a slow breath, closed her mouth, and put her hand on the table. We sat in silence, looking at each other. I could tell Linda wanted to say something, but she didn't know what. She was ready to scold me for my actions. She realized she had lost her moral high ground. The leverage she had in our relationship was built on love and trust. She had casually discarded these qualities for a single night of passion. Linda realized that her actions had exacted a heavier toll. I think it's safe to say that when Linda made the decision to be with Mark, she believed she was just cashing in some of the chips she had accumulated throughout our marriage. It finally dawned on her that she had recklessly put everything on the line. Linda sat silently for a moment, her hands clasped together on the table, staring off into space. It doesn't matter, she said at last. I love you. Yes, you keep insisting that your love holds special significance, but why should I value your love when it's clear that my love for you means nothing to you? After what you've done, why should I care about it? I don't want to lose you. I just don't understand how you thought you could shatter my trust completely and still expect to keep me. You took me for granted and now you don't deserve me. Linda seemed bewildered. I'm going to my place. There's still a lot of work to be done. I'll be back for dinner with you and the kids around the house, so please don't bother me until then. I stood up and headed back to my apartment. Linda was in tears as I left, and it was a really painful moment. I wanted to embrace her like before, but deep down I knew there was no going back. The Linda I knew as my wife was gone and would never return. Anything I have with her now will serve as a painful reminder of everything we could have had. She destroyed it all without a second thought or a hint of remorse. Before dinner, the kids and I ventured to my side of the house to explore. I showed them the new kitchen area and my plan to replace the back wall with glass overlooking the pool. They seemed concerned as they observed the fence dividing the backyard. They grasped that this would be mine. Then I indicated where their new rooms would be. So, you're saying that I'll have 2 bedrooms here? Tommy asked. Because this side is going to be my home and that side will be your mother's home. Emma, are you and Mom getting divorced? Tommy asked. Dad, Mom won't say anything, no matter how many times I suggested to Emma that we're just separated. I don't want to be a weekend dad, so I thought it would be best to split the house. You two can choose which side you want to live on, just as we were about to continue. Linda popped her head through the front door to announce that dinner was ready. We ate in silence, with Linda looking tense. It was clear that the kids had picked up on more than we realized. Tommy blurted out, I'll move in with Dad once he's done decorating my room. Linda's face showed shock. Dad told you we're splitting up. We're not. It's just a misunderstanding. It was just a misunderstanding, and we're still discussing it. Linda clarified. The kids got the answer they were looking for. I told them their mom was tired and needed to rest. I helped her get ready for bed and gave her a kiss on the forehead. I felt like I was comforting a child after a nightmare. I turned off the light and closed the door. My focus shifted to Linda. I was handling her like a grown child who had committed a serious crime and faced a life sentence. I still loved her, but she wasn't a big part of my daily life or thoughts anymore. I checked on Tommy in his room. He was lying on his bed, engrossed in correspondence with his friends. When I asked if he wanted to talk, he declined and proceeded to Emma's room. I found her angry and tearful. She asked why I did this. She said she would have to ask her forgiveness. I know, it's tough. I replied. Then I don't know if I can forgive myself. She said. I understand, but I want us to remain a family. I reassured her that we are. I just won't share a room with Mom anymore. She said. We embraced, exchanged declarations of love, and I returned to my part of the house. This became our new routine. I typically left for work before the kids woke up, so our mornings remained unchanged. Linda and I continued to split responsibilities for shuttling the kids to their various activities and events. Family dinners persisted. Ed and Linda's section of the house whenever possible, despite Linda's attempts to discuss our situation weekly. I rebuffed her, stating my reluctance to engage. School functions became noticeably different. I consciously avoided standing or sitting near Linda during our children's events. If she approached me, I quickly excused myself to the restroom and relocated upon my return. I was rarely alone for long as single or divorced acquaintances often gravitated towards me. They invariably inquired about our relationship status, to which I consistently replied that we were separated as of the following month. I invested in new attire, appliances, kitchen fixtures, and furnishings for my side of the house, transforming it into a stylish bachelor pad with a large TV and an updated entertainment system. I spared no expense when I acquired a high. Linda had concerns about our finances. Jim, can we afford all this? The car must have been expensive. Linda, my car was older than yours by 8 years and I needed an upgrade. You've always replaced your car twice as often as I did, so I decided to catch up on those missed years with my new car. And as for everything else that's new, did you really expect me to live in a place like this? What about the furniture? I thought I was being considerate by not asking you to part with any of the furniture you chose for your home. I'd be happy to share it with you. It's fine, your taste in furniture never appealed to me. Why didn't you say something earlier? I kept quiet because I wanted you to be happy. Furniture wasn't a big deal to me. I let her ponder that for a moment. Don't worry, we're doing well financially. In fact, the house is paid off, and once the kids move out, my side will be too big for me. I plan to rent it out for extra income, so money won't be an issue. Linda flashed me her most approving smile, the someone's getting lucky today smile, and reached out to Pat, placing a hand on my shoulder. I'm not complaining. I like your new car, and you look great in it. Your new clothes look great. I can't take all the credit. Tommy and Emma wanted a convertible to drive, and Samantha helped me pick out the clothes and furniture. We have similar tastes. At the mention of Samantha, Linda's smile faltered and her hand dropped from my shoulder. Oh, I was just curious. She turned and walked away. I hadn't meant to flaunt Samantha in Linda's eyes. I realized that I was spending a lot of time thinking about Samantha and not so much about Linda's feelings. Samantha started coming over to my house a lot, and eventually Tommy moved in with me as his main bedroom. Emma, who had mostly stayed on Linda's side, began spending more time with Samantha. It seemed like Samantha was taking on a role as the main focus of the family. Before long, Samantha was spending weekends and most weeknights with me. The only issue was when I asked her to join us for family dinners for the second time. Linda was polite, but it was clear she didn't want this to become a routine. The next day, as I was leaving for work, Linda stopped me. I'd prefer if you didn't bring your girlfriend to our dinners. That's our time to be a family with the kids. This is great going forward. I'll skip dinner when Samantha isn't there, but I'll also extend an open invitation for the kids to join me and Samantha for dinner if they want. That's not fair. Jim, dinner time is our only chance to be a family together. So, are we talking about? Linda, I think we need to be honest here. Samantha is becoming a significant part of my life and I want her to be more involved. She gets along well with the kids, so I don't see why she should be excluded from our family dinners. I don't think it's fair to her, or to the kids. If you want to exclude her, you'll be excluding me too, but Jim, Linda, your idea of honesty has always been self-serving. Serving, forget about my feelings. I bet you thought you were being honest when you snuck out the back door to be with Mark Lavalier even though we weren't living together anymore. It was surprising to see how Linda still thought she could manipulate me easily. Linda, you threw integrity out the window that night, so if you don't like it, fairness would be for you to start cooking dinners on my side and I'll let you join us. Samantha loves cooking, and she's really good at it, even though she's crying. Linda said, I'm sorry, I brought this up. Samantha is more than welcome to join us for dinner anytime she wants, after we've finished with the pool and hot tub. Tommy particularly enjoyed hanging out with Kim, Christy, and Susan by the new pool. They were flirting with him and competing to see who could make him blush the most. Their competition got more intense with tighter swimsuits, but Christy had an advantage because she had the advantage with her ample curves when she kissed Tommy in the pool, pressing her chest against him. She won the contest. Despite the cold water, Tommy couldn't leave the pool for at least 10 minutes. He was undoubtedly the winner in their game, gaining confidence and eventually getting a girlfriend at school. Once the girls met Tommy's girlfriend, they stopped flirting with him and treated her like the luckiest girl. Samantha has some amazing friends. I never let Linda visit my side of the house. I didn't want her getting in the way of my relationship with Samantha. Unfortunately, a few years later, Samantha graduated from high school and our relationship ended. I could see it in Samantha's expression at Susan's wedding, where we attended together. I realized I was essentially becoming her provider due to our age gap. While it didn't bother me, I sensed it bothered Samantha, despite our great rapport. We spent every weekend together and got to know each other's families. When Samantha mentioned moving, there was a kind of unspoken tension. I proposed, but she said she wanted to stick to a family tradition. I could tell she was torn. I thought I was perfect for her, but maybe not at the right age. It seemed like she was taking me for granted, assuming there were plenty of great men out there. I tried to explain to her that her standards were making it impossible for any man to win her over, just like with Linda. My success seemed to backfire as Samantha thought I was just like the other guys. I reminded her of Linda's mindset and where it led her. Samantha was adamant that she hadn't made the same mistake, sealing our fate. I understood her decision and told her that if she ever changed her mind, I'd be there. Maybe we could reconnect later in life when the age gap isn't as significant. I really enjoyed spending time with Samantha. I appreciated her honesty and our conversations. Linda was deceitful, unlike Samantha. Linda's friends, who were once my friends, tried to persuade me to reconcile with Linda. Their arguments didn't work. I would say that it's not easy to be cheated on by your spouse. From what I saw that night, it seemed like they were encouraging it. I actually think it was more than just chance that led us to a club Mark Lavalier often goes to. I just happened to be married to the most attractive woman. You could call it karma. A few months later, I heard that the girls had switched their girls' night out to a new club, one where Mark Lavalier was known to frequent without informing their husbands. I casually mentioned to Dave that I saw Dee dancing with Mark at the club. Dave's friend even noticed that Mark vanished about an hour later, which coincided with the departure of the group of ladies from the club. However, Dave's friend didn't witness Dee leaving with the group. When Dave confronted him, all the wives denied being at the club and insisted it was a mistake. But days later, Dave's friends shared a photo showing Mark Lavalier conversing with the wives at the table. Eventually, the wives admitted their presence at the club, but each I saw Dee dancing with Mark at the club. Dave's friend even noticed that Mark vanished about an hour later, which was around the same time the group of ladies left the club. However, Dave's friend didn't witness Dee leaving with the group. When confronted, all the wives denied being at the club and insisted it was a mistake. However, days later, Dave's friends shared a photo showing Mark Lavalier conversing with the wives at the table. Eventually, the wives admitted their presence at the club, but each claimed no one left with Mark. Their conflicting stories eventually revealed the truth. The wives were reluctant to betray their friend, so they refused to identify who left with Mark. By the time they did, it was Dee. It was too late, though. The damage to trust had already been done. I heard what happened during a meeting of husbands to compare their wives' accounts. Dave summed it up pretty well. He observed that the wives had been covering for each other for a long time and that they were easily able to lie. This wasn't their first girls' night out, so how could they be sure it wasn't Dee's turn to have an encounter with Mark Lavalier or someone else? Each husband noticed the expressions on their wives' faces when Mark Lavalier approached. That evening at our table, everyone heard their wives saying how great it was that Linda had the chance to go to the bachelorette party. All the husbands had got to know Linda quite well by then. They were pleased with the new excitement in the bedroom as they discussed her encounter with Mark. However, a few months later, one husband joked that he hated sleeping on silk sheets after comparing notes. They realized that both sets of silk sheets were new and identical in color. In discussions with other husbands, it came to light that 4 couples had recently acquired new white silk sheets for their beds following Dee's night with Mark. The husbands grew concerned that their wives were revisiting their own encounters with him. All 4 couples ended up divorcing within a year. I learned of this when Dave, the first to divorce, apologized to me and explained the events. This led to his split. Each husband then told me they were sorry for what happened with Linda. They basically said that if they'd stood up for me, it might have sent a clearer message to their wives, potentially saving their marriages. As for Mark Lavalier, he ended up getting into trouble with the wrong person. No one knows who, but as Mark left the club with his latest conquest, someone in a ski mask stunned him with a taser before Mark could recover. A salon struck him in the groin while Mark screamed in pain. The attackers severely injured both of them. His kneecaps, despite having video footage, no one was ever apprehended. There were too many husbands with motives and opportunities. Mark lost his ability to walk regarding Linda. Our last discussion about our relationship occurred on the day Emma moved out. By then, we were already divorced and I had leased out. I moved out of the house and into a condo by the beach. When Emma left for college, Linda asked if she could speak to me. I told her that I still loved Jim and that I'd made a mistake. I haven't dated or even looked at another man since. I know you haven't been, and I haven't been in a serious relationship with anyone since Samantha. I'd like you to move back in with me just to see how things go. Linda then removed a necklace from around her neck and handed it to me. It was hanging from it was my wedding ring, the same ring I had given to Dee the night Linda left me. Linda gazed at me with hope in her eyes. Her eyes, you still don't understand what happened. Linda, that night you thought it was a test of my love for you, but it was really a test of your love for me. I truly love you. You cherish what we once had, you loved our seemingly perfect marriage, having the ideal husband and children, you appreciated. I never treated you like an object or a trophy wife. We made decisions together. You enjoyed our physical intimacy, even if it wasn't as frequent or intense as it was at the beginning. You liked that I put your feelings first. You valued the financial stability I provided for your projects, but above all, you valued my trust in you. Now you say you love me more than ever, but you realize you won't find anyone who could make you as happy. No one will ever love you as much as I did. Linda stayed still, holding the necklace at arm's length, her grip tightening. You didn't appreciate what we had until now. I can't be near you anymore. I'll never again give you the chance to hurt me like you did. I thought it was us against the world, but you destroyed us when you chose to be with Mark Lavalier. Linda began to sob. How many times? Do I have to say I regret it? It was never about Mark. Linda, you thought you were lucky to go out with him, but I was lucky too when I was at my lowest. Your friends tried to convince me I was foolish, but you showed me we were truly special, not because of you, but because of me. You left because my love was I know you think you're stronger, but I'm the one who's special. I'm not like you. I'd never betray someone like you did. I was sitting at this table, thinking about everything that's happened. I saw Samantha across the room, looking sad. When she caught my gaze, she smiled. It made me realize I still had a chance for happiness. I've started a new chapter in my life. You opened my eyes and set me free. I climbed into my convertible and drove off with a grin. I couldn't wait to return home. Samantha left her job and moved in with me last week. Since then, she's shown me that she'll always need me in her life. Trust is a beautiful thing.